like to invite Professor S.P. Singh sir, his ex-department head of department of Pharmacology, GST Medical College, Kanpur. Uh, S.P. Singh sir, please.
And diligent students. Now we are going to start second lecture of this President's Conference, and we are delighted to have Professor Gundu H.R. Rao between us. Before starting this lecture, I would like to introduce Professor Gundu H.R. Rao. He obtained his BSc degree from University of Mysore and BSc Honours and MSc degrees from Pune University. He immigrated to USA in 1965 and is specialized in brain storage technology and obtained his PhD degree from Kansas State University, Manhattan, Kansas. After working as postdoctoral fellow at the Texas A&M University of Minnesota, he joined Department of Pharmacology as a NIH fellow to get training in toxicology. He has been with University of Minnesota Medical School for over 40 years. He is a naturalized US citizen and a tenured professor in the Department of Laboratory Medicine and Pathology. He also has faculty appointments in anesthesiology, UAE Heart Institute, and Biomedical Engineering Institute. He is an author or co-author of over 300 publications in the field of interest, that is thrombosis and stroke. In the past, he has consulted various medical device development companies in the twin cities including 3M, Medtronic Enclave, St. Jude Medical City Enclave, Vascular Solutions, APP Technology, Endocardiac Solutions, Playcore Enclave, Medical Innovations, Hypertension Diagnostics, and Boston Scientific on problems related to biocompatibility, thrombosis, and stroke. He was the visiting professor in Department of Surgery and Pharmacology, King College in 1986, and the Royal College of Surgeons, England in summer of 1987, and in the Thrombosis Research Institute, London in 1988. He taught one summer at the Institute of Human Physiology, University of Padua, Italy. He also served as a senior consultant to Government of India for 3 successive years from 1990 to 93 under the United Nations program called Top 10. He also served as a visiting professor in Indian Institute of Human Physiology, University of Padua, Italy during 1995 and 96. He is currently listed as the senior Fulbright specialist. He started a society, South Asian Society on Atherosclerosis and Thrombosis, SASAT, to create awareness on vascular disease in 1993. Since then, he is organizing international symposium on atherosclerosis and thrombosis in India every other year. He has edited and published 8 books under the aegis of SASAT. So now you listen what he is. His whole life is devoted to research, particularly for human being, and how much academic he is, you have listened. And today he is going to present a lecture on modern concept of healthcare, that is universal, affordable, integrated healthcare fitness and wellness. Here it is important, affordable and integrated. Whatever healthcare system or wellness system is there, it should be affordable and it should be integrated. Various dimensions of wellness must be integrated to achieve the goal. So you know how much interesting this lecture is. I invite Professor Gundu H.R. Rao to please deliver your lecture.
Dr. Neelima Gupta and associates for this kind invitation for me to come and present some of my viewpoints on this topic. But before that, I just want to surprise you all about a fact which may or may not be there in my biography. This morning when I was coming from the hotel to this venue, I saw an institution for pulses. I was really surprised because I have not seen an institution pulses quite often. 50 years ago, when I went to the USA, I specialized in grain science technology at Kansas State University. So my PhD is in grain sciences. So I was very pleased to just pass in front of it this morning. I dedicate this lecture to the young people here so that they know that I am not a doctor, I'm not a biochemist, I'm not a pharmacologist, I'm a grain technologist. But as yet, I have put together this topic which is of great importance, and this almost summarizes my entire life work. So what I have done here this morning, I'm going to show you. So as you heard in the introduction, I was invited by the Government of India in 1990 by Dr. Khalilullah from G.B. Pant Hospital. And at that time, when I came 3 times in a row, I found out that coronary artery disease is a major problem, and we were not aware of many of the risks involved. Therefore, I started this society in 1993 at the University of Minnesota. As you heard, I've organized a number of conferences here, and we have published over 10 books, 4 on coronary artery disease, 2 on diabetes, 2 on platelets, and on many other subjects. Most of these books are published by JP Medical Publications, New Delhi, and are available in India. Currently, I'm working on a book on diabetes and coronary artery disease. Now, on the modern concepts, what I'm going to do today is talk about what it is involved in terms of the healthcare and what is modern about it. Because healthcare, everywhere they want to talk about universal healthcare, but even the richest country, United States of America, cannot have a universal health care. In fact, the candidates that are trying to become the next president are projecting $20 trillion budget for universal health care. So we are thinking of some simpler ways to achieve than the way they are going about it. So I'm talking about that. But basically, I want to devote it to the 3 aspects of it. Any type of universal health care should be accessible to everyone, whether it is in a rural mass or at the individual level. It should be accessible. How do we make it accessible? Then it should also be acceptable, because in many areas, people would prefer Ayurvedic, homeopathic, Siddha, Yoga, whatever the therapeutic approaches, in addition to the allopathy. So how do we integrate the traditional medical system with the allopathy? Because China and India have excellent traditional medicine, how they can complement each other in developing this so-called integrated healthcare. And then the third issue that I want to discuss is how do we integrate our emerging technologies to get the best out of it. For example, we are talking about fitness, wellness. How do you validate it? What is fitness? What is wellness? Is there a parameter? Are there devices that can give us some information about what's happening? So integration. And then the affordability. Can we afford the type of things that I'm talking about? If no country can afford it, how do we make it affordable in this country? So from that point of view, I want to stress that major studies have shown lifestyle changes can indeed significantly reduce premature mortality. One of the largest clinical trials done by Salim Yusuf and associates from Canada, Inter-Heart Study, which was done in 52 countries, showed that just modifiable risk for heart disease can prevent significantly premature mortality. And then it was followed by another study from Harvard, where they showed that even in a person who is genetically prone to have heart disease, just the lifestyle changes could reduce it by 50%, the acute vascular events. So there is a very important lesson to be learned from these studies. In view of these observations, two major observations, there is a renewed interest in preventive medicine. In this overview, I will discuss the three aspects of it: the affordability, accessibility, and accessibility as it relates to modern concepts of healthcare. I will start with the integration of technologies as to how we are going to plan such a thing. In Karnataka, about 10 or 15 years ago, they thought because we are the IT capital of India, it will be easy to develop telemedicine. The concept was that connectivity, starting from a gram panchayat or at an individual level, and the health worker will given an iPad or a smartphone to get the information, and then relate it to a triage facility. It could be a PHC or sub-health unit. And from there on, it's a whole bunch of Internet of Things. How do you connect it in terms of who is going to provide this healthcare, how it's going to be financed, or how do we connect all the stakeholders, because you have to make it a seamless event in order to achieve that type of progress. So there are lots of ideas: personal computers, smartphones, iPads, and the Wi-Fi related cloud-based technology. And then to the patient, physician's hospital, and finally the drug delivery, all to be kind of automated so that it's a seamless process. So in terms of integration at the rural level, Karnataka state government promoted a platform called Pragati, the progress. And this was done in 5 villages in India. This is one of the villages where it was inaugurated about 10 years ago. I was one of the participants here. It was planned by IIM Bangalore and supported by all of the IT companies in Bangalore: Cisco, Infosys, Wipro, all of them, Honeywell. It was a major event, and as you see here, the concept and the modernization of this black box that you see. It was developed by a firm in Bangalore, Neurosynaptics. All that it did was give connectivity to any type of device that you can plug in using a USB port. So they could plug in this one and connect it to internet. And then, for example, here is a pregnant woman and a rural physician measuring the blood pressure. And this was projected in Apollo Hospitals, Bangalore. what I call this as a top-down approach. Because here, all the giants of the IT technology were there, money from the government of Karnataka, but they didn't figure out, in spite of the fact that it was directed by IAM, they didn't figure out who will pay for this. A village person getting examined here, and the information goes to Apollo. Who is going to pay for the Apollo services? So, this type of top-down approaches fail. Not only here, even in England. National Health Service of England invested 10 billion pounds to develop an automated electronic health system, health record. Finally, in 2010, they gave it up. It failed. So what I'm trying to say is, we have to learn to develop these on hypothesis-based, not top-down. You cannot say that because we have the IT power, we can solve all the solutions. First of all, we have to figure out what is the problem. Just last week, I asked the people who are developing such a problem, what are the common illnesses in a village? They have absolutely no idea. Instead, they will go with an EKG machine or an X-ray machine or a CT scanner. But those are not the things that they need in the village. So the basic thing is you have to find out what it is. But the technology that was developed in Bangalore, the black box, was used very effectively in Bihar and UP to provide what they call telehealth care. Simply put, it will get the information from the individual and then triage it and send it to various primary healthcare centers. And there they will get whatever the required treatment. They claim that this is one of the largest telemedicine. But what is the problem? The problem again is it's not sustainable because again there is no payment system. It was supported by an NGO from USA. And they were able to meet some of these expenses. Therefore, one should think of how do we reduce the cost. For example, if you go to a hospital, get a blood work done, it may cost 1,000 rupees or 3,000 rupees depending upon who is doing the diagnosis. There is a expensive QMAX or diagnostic, whatever it is, or even Quest. But here, in this particular mobile laboratory, they could do everything, and it was also Wi-Fi connected, so the data is ready to go to the internet or cloud. And the simplest thing is it's got a small centrifuge and a way to take the blood and sample it, and then it's all connected in terms of the chemistry, microchemistry, and a printout which gives you whatever the data that was required. Look at the cost. Look at the cost that they, if I want to get it done in a clinic here, if the glucose will cost 100 rupees from me. They're talking it in terms of paisas and rupees, and the entire thing can be done in probably 100 rupees. And this is available, and it is Wi-Fi connected. So, when we talk about such a thing, we need to have certain things. One, cost. Second, the connectivity. For example, this Bluetooth device, the lab thing on a thing, can be transmitted through satellite, or Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth, and all of the information is available for use on a cloud or a server. Now, coming to what else we can do. We would like to monitor and integrate as many technologies as possible to finally arrive at predictability and a precision medicine. For example, look at this Fitbit. It's used by 63 million people. Initially when it came, everybody laughed at it, it was just an activity tracker. Now, there is a study going on in America by NIH and one of the very famous institutions. There are about 10,000 of these to monitor the sleep pattern of the individuals to figure out sleep apnea and various things that promote or use to improve the physical and mental health, because stress and various other things added to the sleep deprivation. And it's very well known sleep apnea also is a cause for many metabolic diseases also. The interesting thing part of it, it collects a variety of physical activity thing, and it all goes into a smartphone or whatever, the application, iPad or even computer. You can look at it every day. I have an Apple Watch, which does the same thing. All of the information goes to a smartphone. What is interesting about it is now variety of such things are coming. This is from Cardia. Just put your fingers there, and it gives you an EKG on your smartphone. And it also costs about $90. So you can keep it in your pocket and get it anytime. And you can also create connectivity. For example, this watch also gives EKG, heart rate variability, and a variety of things. It even alerts if I fall down. And all of that could be linked to my personal physician's portal. So it's available for my physician to see what is happening to me in terms of my exercise, physical activity, mental activity. The last week I was trying to adjust an equipment in the gym. I got an alert saying, looks like you have fallen down. Should I inform somebody? I said, no, I'm not fallen down. I had to press, otherwise you would have called 911 or whatever it is. So these things are, for example, the same device can give you almost 6 LED information. Actually, there is no connectivity to heart at all. It's not even connected by LED. But the thing is, it is getting this information from your pulse. At the end of your finger, which is the closed loop of the blood system, the red cells are going back and forth. And that gives your heart rate. And that, what we call as a pulse wave, could be analyzed, and a lot of information could be developed from that thing. So, interesting thing is, what I'm talking about modern concept is how we are using these technologies to build software-driven, analytics-driven, algorithm-driven information. The good side is these are all very important. The bad side is they are not real measurements, not measuring the heart or even the blood chemistry that I'm going to talk in a few minutes. They are not directly measured. So we need to validate the information from such technology. So if you're looking at what is fitness, there are a number of parameters. American Heart says just not sitting, doing anything is fitness. But still, we have to have a way of measuring fitness or improving on it, so you empower the individual. So you feel good about it. You feel that wellness part of it. How do we do that? So we are looking at integration of technology as well as validation of technologies. For example, this is an Abbott continuous glucose monitor, and the sensors are free in the USA if you are a participant in Medicare. So you can get almost 3 sensors a month, which covers the entire month. Each sensor gives data every 5 minutes and is available on your phone. And if you use the other device called Dexcom G6, it's even available on any kind of smartphone. There's a dedicated reader, whereas there you can get it on any. Initially, they developed it for the type 1 diabetes because children can be monitored. The information goes on smartphone to the parents or doctors, so they can keep track of hypoglycemia. But we have used extensively for type 2 diabetes also. For example, Dr. Talwar showed a slide where he talked about masala dosas and fries and whatever. You can monitor you're eating dosa or parota or whatever it is, in terms of what happens immediately, the glucose peak. So you can become aware. No matter how much I tell, people don't. But when they eat 2 masala dosa, when the peak goes up, they realize you should only have masala dosa. So the peak should not peak very high. In other words, 2 hours glucose should become normal in that period and not stay up. So this gives empowerment. Similarly, I am working with a company in the USA, which is called LD Technologies. They have come up with a platform which uses oximeter, blood pressure monitor, and that pedal-like thing is the galvanic skin response monitor. These are FDA-approved devices for what it does, that is the oximeter, blood pressure, and for the skin response. But the inventor very cleverly has extracted data of all the test responses to give this digital data on various metabolic risks, like lipid markers, blood pressure markers, IgT markers, endothelial test, parasympathetic, sympathetic test, pseudo test, autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, and it's all color coded, and also it could be graphed. So what this does is it gives you an ability to look what is happening in much more complex way than just measuring the 5 modifiable risk factors that Framingham study introduced. This almost gives information about 40 different markers. So it's important for us to know now the technology is available where you don't even have to do a blood chemistry to get this kind of information. But is it true? We need to validate and say that is true. So that's what we do. We screened about 1,000 patients in Bombay using this and found out what was the strong point, what is the weak point, and how do we interpret it. And we published 3 papers on it. So it is very important to use such technology to get information. This system has been further improved to include a variety of information and develop a wellness scoring. Because the concept of wellness is right, but how do you say what are the factors, how do they add to this value system, and what are the components you should have in terms of the total wellness? That is the life score, autonomic risk score, vascular score, all of those things have to be incorporated, and then you have to have the software analytics to do the software, the data processing, and come up with appropriate algorithms to include all of the risk parameters and finally give a score. And that score will represent the overall wellness. So you have the fitness, the diet, microcirculation, C-fiber, cardiac innervation. On the other side you have inflammation, immune response, resistance, lipid profile, blood pressure, coagulation, ABI. So it is measuring a variety of things, insulin resistance, hypertension, but none of it is from a blood chemistry or anything. It's all electrical signals measured at various points and then computed and correlated with algorithms. Let us look at the data. How it would have. So this is the chart that comes out, and it will list in various colors, again green, red, yellow, and it takes the lifestyle, autonomic nervous system, vascular function, endothelial function, GSR tests, diet, and emotion. So the final scores will be, for example, the lifestyle score here in this particular is 29, autonomic nervous system 27, 21. So it is about 77% in terms of wellness scoring. But same patient, if you put them in activity, structured physical activity and lifestyle change, now it brings up to 98%. And you can follow what are the contributing factors improved by lifestyle change. Or you can even use for intervention. For example, if we had a person with endothelial dysfunction and we give a larginin orally, we can show that it brings the wellness score. For example, there is a work from Ravi Kasliwal from Delhi, where they have shown just eating pistachio improves endothelial dysfunction. So, again, empowering the person in terms of managing their own physical or wellness. Here are the ability for us to develop kind of information about what is wellness and how do we improve, what are the contributing factors, whether it's the diet, physical activity, emotional, because it's all included here. In fact, there was a recent paper where look at the stress itself and they show that there is a change because. But all of this comes from simple tests which are being done, integrated, analyzed. Now, what is our very interest in this? This technology that I showed you has been further improved. Like for example, this is a life score system. You see the pedal where the person stands, there is a handle, and in the top there is a camera. So it measures your weight and then height and develops BMI. That handle has the bioimpediment measurement, which measures the body composition. And then you get all of the information automatically. There are only 4 steps involved, totally automatic. It measures your blood pressure, oximetry, everything, and gives you the overall wellness. So, when we have a variety of these non-invasive tools available now, all of them are giving their own interpretation and data. What we would like to do is develop an app or a health portal which will import this type of information, use further proprietary software, analyze, and increase the risk prediction. Because right now they are all standalone. They go to your health portal or Microsoft Health or whatever, but they are not integrated to your Apple Watch, Fitbit, or even these non-invasive things. They are all independent in terms of what they can provide you. But if you develop an app which can take from any source the data and further integrates, my interest is cardiometabolic disease. So I know what are risk factors. So I should be able to take that type of information and come up with integration saying you should be doing this, you should not be doing this, whatever it is, whether it is diet, physical activity, emotional, all of these things. That's one very useful thing that we are very much interested in doing. We are looking at how it can be done. And I'm working with some of the engineering and IT people in Bangalore. Now coming to the affordable healthcare. So we talked about telehealth. We talked about all of these integrated devices. Finally, it comes to how are we going to pay for this? We've got a beautiful example. This is the Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Health in Bangalore, a pediatric facility. There, if you pay 20 rupees and get an ID, and that ID, which whether it is Aadhaar or ration card, whatever it is, it takes into account your social capabilities, economic capabilities, and uses a variety of healthcare schemes and takes care of the bill. Nobody pays anything other than the ID card. And if they can do, why not we do in other places? There are a number of places where they have IT capability. We should be able to do it. So we are interested in that part of it. And of course now Modi Care is interested in digital health and a number of ways of integrating is possible, the Aadhaar and various other systems. And there is money for that also. If you look at the healthcare schemes in India, there are a number of healthcare schemes. But nobody can integrate it. Even if I go to one of the best hospitals in Bangalore, they don't have all of this in their computer system to integrate. So that's where again emphasis is integration of the payment system using the various healthcare schemes so that once you have the identity and the economic capability, one can develop a seamless payment system which will be less burdened and it becomes very affordable. So I will just summarize here. We have the immediate need to establish a consortium for the development of wearable medical technologies, development of an integrated IT support web cloud-enabled healthcare using internet connectivity, develop novel and cost-effective diagnostic tools with IoT for integration and development of health delivery. Concentrate on mobile health application, which is the future of IoT and IoT. There are a number of things will come, but we should bear in mind all of them have to be validated. You cannot just go by their claim that it is 100% correct or valid. And bring the private-public academia participation in developing integrated healthcare. The CSR amount is about 50,000 crores, and we are not tapped it at all. In fact, next week we have a conference in Bangalore where we're looking at this type of a consortium establishment. Concentrate on need-based, low-cost technologies for development, not look at a top-down approach of giving millions of dollars to some and finding a solution for it. So this is the conference that is November 14th and 16th. We are looking at integration of technologies using the IT and various other sources that we have, knowledge sources. So I'll stop at this point, and I hope I have given you an overview of what our ideas are, and we have also proposed this to the AYUSH in India because we have the experience in screening in wellness as a Swedish collaboration, and we can train the trainers in how to use some of these tools to evaluate the physical activity as well as wellness indexes. Thank you very much for your patience.
So you talked about seamless integration of health information, and that too affordable. I think the proper way to go about it is non-proprietary development, just like Linux, so that you don't have to depend on Apple or Intel or Microsoft or any other proprietary thing. And for that, government can fund.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And likewise, all the parameters have to be standardized and validated with other gold standard instruments, and that too for Asia specific and for India specific or culture specific.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And the limiting factor, I mean, after retirement for the last 10 years, I'm spending half of my time in Bangalore. What I have found is that there is a big gap between the IT people and the engineering and the healthcare. So we have to make it a multidisciplinary platform so that they understand each other and can develop the specific things that you addressed. That's where the problem is, and that's where the difficulty is. But if the government or even the healthcare people support, just like they did for Aadhaar, with a central consortium of technically qualified people, it is possible for us to develop, and probably India can be the leader in healthcare because we have both the traditional health system as well as allopathy. And traditional health system is tremendously helpful in prevention medicine. Because modern healthcare, allopathy has failed prevention. And the reason is, once people became aware of the risk factors, industries jumped in and developed all these drugs. So even a diabetic became kind of confident that I can take pills and live forever. That is a wrong approach because that almost killed the prevention medicine. People started living with the diseases rather than prevent the diseases. So our thrust is on prevention.
Secondly, do you think a system like Aadhaar could have been worked or implemented in US, where except for DNA, practically all the parameters have been taken, has become a state surveillance system.
The problem with the US healthcare is the privacy laws. Because of the privacy laws, they don't share the information. The healthcare system, health information is not shared between the groups. And that's what happened even in England. But on the other hand, if a country decides that we will keep that as integrated, it will work. But I'll tell you a very simple thing. We have 3 Apollo hospitals in Bangalore. I go to 2 of them. They're not connected. They're not connected. And it was developed by IBM. So we don't think about it. So one has my X-rays and EKG and everything, another has my internist. The person has no access to any of my scans. So that is where we have to think in terms of how we develop a system which can be employed anywhere in India. It's like a turnkey thing. So you put it as a package. Once you develop it, from the time you meet a person, the payment, just like the Child Institute I taught, that can be applied in any hospital and reproduce very easily, because the drugs are free for somebody, and for some classes diagnostic is free, and there is an insurance system in the Ayushman Bharat. And if we can use all of that, we can develop one of the fantastic medical systems which could be a model for China and other countries.
Thank you, sir. We are running short of time, so please conclude this session.
Now you listen, Professor Gundu Rao's very informative information is available nowadays, but whether it is affordable, it is sustainable, have got a big question mark. Today, traditional way of exercise, that is Surya Namaskar, is very significant. Till today it is very significant. And he highlighted the wellness score, and in that wellness score, diet, lifestyle, diabetes and hypertension contributes a lot. Diet, you can care yourself. Lifestyle, you can improve yourself. Diabetes and hypertension must be monitored who are suffering from it. He also highlighted the affordable healthcare establishment in India. Thanks to Professor Gundu Rao for giving such an informative lecture, and thanks to him that he is coming all the way from USA. Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite Dr. Alka Sharma and Dr. Subhash there to felicitate Professor Gundu.
Next session is on preventive strategies for health and wellness, the Ayurvedic way. Speaker is Dr. Purnima Krishnamurthy, and Program Director is Dr. P.C. Chaudhary. I request Dr. P.C. Chaudhary to come on the dais and conduct the talk.